Basically what happens in your engine bay after you press this AC switch is something referred to as your compressor kicks on. And so your compressor on this car is found right here. The job of your compressor is to compress the fluid coming in, which in this case is referred to as R134A if it's newer, or R12 if it's older. You can do an R12 to R134A conversion, which I did on this car because it's very difficult and expensive to find R12 these days. So you have to update the gaskets in your system. But anyways, so you have your coolant coming in, it's in a liquid state, it's in a vapor state, it goes through your compressor, and then after your compressor has increased the pressure in the fluid, inside of something referred to as your condenser right here, which looks very much like a radiator, your coolant, such as R134A, will be changing from vapor to liquid. When this happens, energy will be released to the environment, so this thing gets very hot, which is the reason why it's in your engine bay. And then you now have a fluid that has lost some of its kinetic energy traveling through here. It moves through your condenser, and then from your condenser it goes here and into the actual engine bay, into the cabin. What you'll also note is how you have these two screws right here. This is where you actually fill your refrigerant inside of your car. And it's like on Top Gear and stuff, when you see people screw with other people's air conditioning units, if you were to loosen these things, you let all of the refrigerant out of the system, which is how they break each other's air conditioning things, which is funny and sad at the same time. R12 and R134 are not good for the environment, so I don't recommend doing this. But you do also, if you are going to be troubleshooting these things, you do want to make sure you can collect and safely dispose of the refrigerants in accordance with all the regulations, because this stuff is very toxic and not good for our ozone. Anyways, once your R134 has been condensed into liquid, it will travel into your actual cabin of the car. And inside the car, generally, when my car it's underneath the passenger seat, it goes through something called an expansion valve. And inside the expansion valve, you're increasing the pressure, which will make the coolant, R134, turn from liquid into vapor. And going from liquid to vapor will take energy away from the environment. And so inside of something referred to as your evaporator, you're evaporating the liquid into gas. This makes the evaporator very cold. Your evaporator is essentially a radiator. It's exchanging energy between two fluids. In this case, one of your fluids is the R134A coolant that is taking in energy from some other fluid. The other fluid that you have coming in here, because this is very chemical engineering, is the air that would normally go into the cabin, is passing, it comes in there, travels over your evaporator, which at this point is very cold, so your hot air from a hot day or whatever in the summer is now getting chilled as it's passing through your evaporator before it goes into the cabin. And then you've now turned your coolant back into a vapor phase. And so what happens next is your vapor phase coolant or refrigerant will come out of your cabin and then back into your compressor. Generally, you will also have some kind of dryer in your loop, and this is to make sure that you've removed all of the water from your system. And then once you've done that, it will go into this compressor here. And so usually when you don't have the AC on, the clutch is not engaged, but when you do have the AC on, and depending on how cold you're demanding the air inside the cabin to be, the clutch will engage at a different frequency. So when this thing kicks on, you can hear it because it'll start making more noises. But yeah, so this thing is what is powering this whole thing. This does consume a lot of mechanical energy from your engine, which does result in you always getting lower fuel economy when you have your air conditioning on. But the other thing that can go wrong here, if your air conditioning isn't working, is if you have a serpentine belt break, in which case you can no longer power your compressor. your coolant would no longer work. So there's a lot of ways that this can go wrong. Generally, in these cars, what does go wrong is that they develop leaks in the little O-rings that help form these connections between the aluminum tubes and whatever connection they have to make. Another question or thing I had when I was learning about this was, so you have aluminum here and then you have foam. What is the purpose of this? So with the aluminum, aluminum is pretty good at preventing the R134A or whatever refrigerant you're using from escaping. And then you have the foam here, which is for insulation, because when your car is running, this place gets really hot, and the less heat you have entering your refrigerator loop is a good thing, because you want to make sure that you can get your cabin as cold as you possibly can without needing to run your compressor more than you really need to. So that is going to wrap things up for this video. I hope this helps some people learn how these things work. Let me know if you have any questions, and thanks for watching.